In a quiet corner of the city, where concrete blocks crowd out sunlight and rent eats half every paycheck, lived a young woman named Amahle. Dreams here feel like billboards you can never reach. Each morning, she wakes up to the same cracked linoleum and empty fridge. Her last jar of coffee finished 3 days ago. Unpaid bills stack thick on her chipped wooden table, each red stamp screaming past due. Her future stretches out blank, no signposts, no end to the grind. She works 2 shifts 6 days a week. Her feet blister through cheap sneakers by the end of each week. She skips lunch to save change for the electricity bill. But no matter how much effort she gives, it never seems to be enough. One emergency car repair wipes out 3 months of savings. She is back to zero, faster than before. At night, she sits by her rusted window ledge, watching the lights of the downtown skyline flicker in the distance. The cars move fast, carrying people who have warm dinners and stable plans. She wonders if her life will ever change, if she will ever wake up without a knot in her stomach from worry. "I'm tired," she once whispered to the dark. "I just want a better life." The dark swallowed her words. She pressed her forehead to the cool glass of the window and let her shoulders slump. That was when her phone buzzed in her pocket. The vibration was sharp against her hip, cutting through the quiet of her empty apartment. She fished it out. The screen dimmed to save the dying battery. The text glowed up at her from a name she hadn't seen in months, a friend from her first job who'd left the neighborhood 6 months prior. The invitation was simple. Come out to a new club downtown. Somewhere different. Somewhere she promised would change everything. Amahle stared at the screen for a full minute. She checked her bank balance, just to be sure. The number was so low it barely covered next week's rent. She didn't have money for cover charges, for drinks, for anything that didn't go to bills. Her friend replied before she could type out a rejection. "I've got you. No cost. Just come." A low hum of warning hummed at the back of her throat. Nothing good came free, not in her life. Every hand that offered help always wanted something in return, something she couldn't afford to give. But the hum was quiet, drowned out by the years of grinding worry. She typed back, "I'll be there." The bus rumbled toward downtown, carrying her away from the concrete blocks and the cracked linoleum, toward a world that had always been just out of reach. The bass thrums up through the soles of her shoes, vibrating the table under her elbows. The crowd swirls around them, bodies pressing close, laughter cutting through the thick, warm air. Her friend leans in, whispering in her ear, "Look, Amahle, I know life has been hard for you, but if you would allow me, I would like to introduce you to someone who can change your life for the better." Her friend leans in again, breath smelling of expensive champagne, and repeats the offer. Amahle twists her fork against the edge of her salad plate, the metal scraping against ceramic with every small. A low hum of warning still nags at the back of her mind, sharp and persistent. She knows nothing in this world comes without a price. But the price of her current life is already too high. Empty cupboards, blistered feet, red-stamped past-due bills that pile higher every month. She is tired of running just to stay in the same place. She sets down her fork, finishes the last sip of her wine, and nods. That is when she feels it. A shift in the crowd. People step aside, unconsciously making space for someone moving through the room. For a long, breathless second, the whole club fades into the background. All she can see is him, all she can hear is that promise. This is the break she has been waiting for. She lets her guard slip, just enough to give him a small smile. She tells him her name. The noise softens for half a beat, as if the whole club knows he is there. She looks up, and he is already looking at her. He cuts straight through the crowd, no hurry, no hesitation, like he knows exactly where he is going. He stops right beside her table, and the space around him feels suddenly smaller, brighter. His voice is low, smooth, pitched so only she can hear it over the music. "You're different," he says. "I can change your life." He opens the passenger door of his car for her, and she slides in, still half convinced she's dreaming. The car pulls away from the club, gliding smoothly toward the hills outside the city, leaving the glow of downtown far behind. They reach the gated entrance, and the iron bars swing open automatically before they even slow down. The gate clicks shut and locks behind them before the car pulls onto the curved driveway. Amari presses her face to the window, staring out at the green lawns rolling out on either side, lush and thick even in the dry summer heat. She calculates the water bill in her head, and it makes her breath catch enough to feed her for 2 months, just to keep the grass green. The car stops in front of the main entrance, and he comes around to open her door again. She steps out onto the smooth stone paving, and follows him up the wide steps. The door clicks open, and she steps inside. The first thing that hits her is the silence. The minutes stretch thin, stretch tight over the heavy silence. He pours her a glass of wine, and she holds it in both hands, the cold glass doing nothing to steady her shaking fingers. The lights dim slowly, so gradual she almost doesn't notice until the whole room is swallowed in half-darkness. Shadows stretch across the marble, long and thin, creeping toward her shoes like living things. That's when she hears it. A soft hum, pressed into the corners of the room, too low to make out words at first. It brushes against the back of her neck, like someone breathing just behind her. She spins around, and no one is there. The hum rises. It becomes words, winding around her ankles, crawling up her calves, curling tight around her throat. You belong here. You belong here. The whispers come from everywhere. From the walls, from the ceiling, from behind the closed doors down the hall. Her heart hammered against her ribs, so hard it aches. The wine glass slips in her hand, hits the marble floor, and shatters into 1,000 tiny pieces. She doesn't move to clean it. Cold panic claws up her throat, sharp enough to make her gag. "This isn't right," she says, her voice cracking, backing away from him step by step. Her heel catches on the edge of a rug, and she stumbles, catching herself on the back of a leather sofa. "I need to leave." She turns and runs for the front door, her shoes sliding on the polished marble. She grabs the brass handle, twists it hard. It doesn't move. She shakes it, throws her weight against the solid oak. It stays locked, immovable. Her breath comes in ragged gasps, and she spins around, running for the nearest window. The frame is sealed shut, no latch to pull, no way to pry it open. Thick black curtains hang tight, blocking out every bit of night. Adrenaline hits her like a jolt to the chest, cutting through the jelly weakness in her legs. He steps forward, slow, overconfident, like a cat playing with a mouse before it bites down. He reaches for her arm, and his fingers brush the fabric of her sleeve. That's all she needs. She ducks hard under his outstretched arm, slamming her shoulder into the soft curve of his chest as she passes. He grunts, off balance, stumbles back into the wall. She doesn't stop. She doesn't look back. She bolts down the back hallway, her heart hammering so loud it drowns out the whispers behind her. The walls blur past, dark wood and framed paintings, nothing but shapes in the half-light. She slams her palm into every door handle she passes. The first 2 are locked. The third gives. It turns under her hand, clicks open, and she wrenches it wide before she can even think. Cold night air hits her face, sharp and fresh, and it burns her lungs when she gasps. She doesn't hesitate. She flies out the door, onto the packed dirt path that winds down the side of the hill. One of her shoes catches on the door frame, and it rips off her foot, left behind in the doorway. She keeps running. The second slips off halfway down the first switchback, flying off into the dark brush. She doesn't stop to retrieve them. The sharp gravel bites into the soft soles of her bare feet immediately, cutting thin, stinging lines with every step. Blood beads on her skin, mixes with the dirt, but she doesn't slow down. She can hear him behind her now, heavy footsteps pounding on the dirt, shouting something she can't make out over the roar of blood in her ears. She doesn't watch the path ahead. She watches the ground behind her, eyes scanning for his shape in the dark, listening for the pound of his footsteps. Her legs are shaking, burning, each step sending a fresh jolt of pain up from her cut feet. She can barely breathe, but she still doesn't slow. The next switchback comes fast, and she turns too wide, too fast. She stumbles forward, off the center of the road, and straight into something solid. The impact knocks the breath clean out of her chest. She reels back, arms flailing, and hits the gravel hard on her bottom. She scrambles backward, scrabbling for purchase on the loose stones, heart hammering so hard it feels like it will jump out of her throat. She waits for the rough grab, for the cold voice to tell her she can't leave. It doesn't come. She blinks the tears and dirt out of her eyes and looks up. A older woman stands right in front of her, perfectly still, perfectly calm. She doesn't reach for Amari. She doesn't move forward. She stands there, under the faint glow of the single streetlight. No surprise on her face, just quiet, steady certainty. The woman's gaze softens when she sees the bare, bleeding feet, when she sees the panic still frozen on Amari's face. You have seen the darkness. The older woman nods softly, her face still free of judgment. She kneels down to Amari's level and sets a warm, steady hand on her shaking shoulder. The enemy always shows you what glitters, but he hides the chains, she says, her voice soft but firm enough to cut through Amari's sobs. Amari looks up at her, eyes red and swimming, her hands twisting so tight in her dress her knuckles go white. "What do I do?" she begs. "I don't know where to go. He's still behind me. I don't have anywhere to go." The woman steps closer, and her voice fills with a quiet compassion that makes Amari's sobs soften just a little. "There is only one way out," she says. "You need Jesus." She helps Amahle to her feet, slips one of Amari's arms over her own shoulder, and takes half her weight when Amari's legs buckle under her. They walk slowly down the winding mountain road together, the woman steadying her every time her bleeding feet slip on loose gravel. The chapel is small, cinder block and stained glass, open 24 hours a day for anyone who needs a place to pray. The door sticks a little when the woman pushes it open, and a warm yellow light spills out onto the pavement. Inside, the air smells like old wood and burnt candle wax. The only sound is the soft tick of a clock above the altar. The woman leads her down the center aisle to a quiet back pew and lets Amahle slide down to her knees on the worn carpet. The words hang in the quiet chapel air, raw and unpolished, and then something shifts. Not a thunderclap, not a lightning strike, just a slow, soft unclenching. The cold fear that had gripped her heart for months, that had coiled tight around her throat every time she checked her bank balance, every time she opened a red-stamped bill, begins to loosen. It uncurled its fingers one by one, pulling away the tight knot that had sat in her stomach every morning when she woke. The heavy weight of desperation, the one that had pressed down on her shoulders for years, lifts like she's shed a coat made of lead. A peace she has never known before fills the empty spaces in her chest, slow and warm, like sunlight spreading across cracked linoleum. It does not come with a mansion. It does not come with a bank account full of money, or a fancy car, or champagne that costs more than her weekly groceries. But it comes with something far greater, something the glittering world up in the hills could never give her. Freedom. Freedom from the fear that she would always be stuck, always struggling, always one emergency away from zero. Freedom from the desperation that made her reach for any hand that promised to take the pain away. Freedom from the quiet dread that her future would always stretch out blank, endless, grinding. From that day forward, Amari's life is no longer driven by the panic of survival. It is driven by purpose. She still works 2 shifts some weeks. She still counts change for groceries, still mends the holes in her sneakers instead of buying new ones, still stacks bills on her chipped table at the end of the month. Because sometimes, the doors that promise everything you ever wanted can cost you your soul, and sometimes, the only way out of the darkness is to reach for the light that has been waiting for you all along.